What is up, guys? Welcome back to my reaction channel. It's your boy Chris, and today we're gonna be reacting to US Military Everywhere by Johnny Harris. Y'all know it is, guys. For those who suggested a video in the comment section, don't worry, guys. I'm gonna make a reaction video on it. Just wait, you know what I'm saying? I'm going through it order by order. Y'all know how it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button now. Hit the bell button for post notifications and make sure to like the video, to support the channel. Anyways, let's get into the intro.
Imagine a world where the most powerful country on Earth in 2021 wasn't the United States, but rather Spain.
Alright.
And instead of setting up military bases just in their own country, they also set up bases all around the world. Lots of those bases are in former colonies, but also there's a bunch in the United States. Just imagine this. You zoom into Fayetteville, North Carolina, and you see a huge military base. But it's not a US military base, it's a Spanish base on American soil, with lots of homes for the Spanish soldiers and their families, powerful weapon systems,
like a city,
aircraft, all run by the Spanish military. Go inside of one of these bases and it's all Spanish restaurants. Americans can't come in here unless they work for the Spanish government. And then imagine 100 more of these, all throughout the United States on American soil, and hundreds of more throughout the world. Or shift the scenario a little bit. What if it was a country that wasn't our ally? A country like China? What if they had military bases, not in the US, but right up close to our border? Powerful weapon systems.
So he's doing a hypothetical here. He's doing a what if, So yeah, also, if China has a lot of bases in other countries, it's not gonna fly like how US have. A lot of countries gonna complain about it, unlike US, which literally no one's complain about. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
it's right off our shores in islands in the Caribbean. If you're an American, you have to imagine what that would feel like. If you're not an American, it's likely you already kind of know what this feels like. The United States has an extensive network of military bases outside of our borders. Hundreds of bases. I've been fascinated for a very long time about understanding these US foreign bases abroad, but I've never actually taken the time to accurately map them. So let's do it. Let's map every single US military base around the world. It turns out that's a huge task.
This is the story of the men of the United States Army who made this project possible, and of man's never-ceasing quest for knowledge.
Yo, the sounds though. Okay.
This is a full armored division. To give you an idea of size, each of those small dark squares includes more than 1,000 men.
The United States military is bigger than any of us can really fathom. It's so big that even the US military doesn't know how big the US military is. Back in 2018, 1,200 independent accountants and analysts came in to try to audit the US Department of Defense. To basically try to get like a paper trail of how big this thing is, how much money it spends, etc. And the Department of Defense didn't pass the audit. Like they literally did not have the documents or the knowledge to really piece together a full scope of what this organization is, how big it is, how much money it spends. So we don't know. Nobody knows how big the Pentagon is in all of its forms. All we do know is that objectively it is one of the, if not the largest and most powerful organization on the planet and in the history of humanity. I mean, if you have a organization that's more powerful than the Department of Defense in the history of humans, like, let me know. I want to know about it. But as far as I can tell, there's nothing bigger and more powerful than the United States military in 2021. And much of the US military is not actually in the US, but is actually outside of our borders, all around the world.
This post is somewhere in Germany, overlooking a sector of the Iron Curtain.
One of the first things that Joe Biden and his administration did when they came into power a couple of weeks ago down the road was ask for an assessment of how big is our military presence around the whole world? What is our strategy? But actually,
It's
does
big,
this
bro.
presence look like?
It's
The
big.
department will conduct a global force posture review of U.S. military footprint, resources, and strategies.
Footprint. I like that. That's like a nice thing. Like, what's our footprint? How big is our footprint around the world? We don't really know. The Pentagon is gonna start to try to assess that. So let's help the Pentagon out and try to map every single United States base around the entire world. Let's do it.
You know, if government officials can't even map it out, what makes you think you can
It
do
wasn't too long
You know?
ago when I used to think that having military bases
Bro.
in other countries was totally normal. Like, doesn't every country have like military bases in other countries? Yeah. Anyway, this was sort of reinforced for me when I was in college. I did an internship at NATO, with the headquarters of NATO, which was in Brussels. To get this job, I had to get a secret security clearance from the US government in order to enter the military base, which was NATO. This was really cool because there was always like people coming through NATO that I got to meet, like my diplomacy hero Madeleine Albright, who used to be the Secretary of State, or this guy.
It's a great honor representing my country abroad for the last 37 years.
Good old Joe. Hey Joe, had no idea you'd be
Okay.
president someday. Anyway, the big benefit of having this secret security clearance is that I could go into any military base anywhere. And so on Saturdays, I would drive an hour from Brussels to a little village in the Belgian countryside where a military base had been sort of plopped down in the middle of the Belgian countryside, in between like stone walls and quaint streets and sheep and farming plots. Yeah, it's a little blurry in this
Pause, guys. How big are those bases? How big are we talking about? Is it as big as a city? As big as a village? You know? Exact numbers, right? Like, can someone tell me in the comment section how big are those bases is? Because I really want to know though, because are they paying for the rent in that place, or is just given to them by the government?
map because it's,
I don't know how it
a
works.
military base and sometimes they blur the satellite imagery. Nothing I can do about it, sorry. And as
Okay.
soon as I entered into the base, went through all the security and I was in the base, I felt like I had left Belgium and was suddenly entering suburban America.
Welcome to the United States.
There was a Taco Bell and movie theaters with American movies
What the fuck?
and all sorts of shops and like yoga studios and like a grocery store that had all of the products that I was very used to, all at the same prices I could get them in the United States, even though they had been flown across the Atlantic and brought to this place, which is a very expensive thing to do. It was a dream for me as a poor college kid living in Brussels and feeling a little bit homesick, to be honest. I hadn't really figured out culture shock at this point. So
Oh.
yeah, I kind of loved it. And I was, again, sort of like, doesn't everyone have military bases in other countries and they can sort of just go to their military base? And it was just, I
No.
was so naive.
No.
Alas, I've learned the truth. Luckily, I was able to talk to somebody who literally wrote the book on U.S. military bases abroad.
Most U.S.
Oh.
bases abroad look like not so small U.S. towns.
Over the years, David has been
David.
researching and compiling a database of all the U.S. bases around the world. The result is a very detailed audit that hasn't really ever been done to this degree. In fact, a few years
Oh,
ago, the
shit,
Pentagon's
okay.
own research arm, the RAND Corp, was doing some research on military bases abroad. And instead of using the Pentagon's list of US military bases abroad, these guys used David's list. Like, they used David, he's a professor, he's like an anthropologist, he's not like a part of DOD.
What the fuck?
And yet they're
Okay.
like, this list that he made is actually more authoritative than like the Pentagon's own list.
I mean, I'm sort of honored.
Pause. Guys, I'm not gonna pause a lot, okay, but bear me. Imagine like being so good at researching something that even the Pentagon itself and its officials use your own research as a reference. Like, bro, that should put you, you know what I'm saying, a little bit of pride in yourself.
But it's not a good sign if the Pentagon, a Pentagon research arm, is using my list and not the Pentagon's own list.
So I got a hold of David's
Okay.
list and started wrestling with the data and finding a
Hey, yo,
way to
that's smart,
display it
though.
on a map
Okay.
so that I could get every single base to show somehow. After a few weeks of doing this, I finally have a map. And that map looks like this. Every dot on this
shit,
map
bro.
is a US military base or installation of some sort in a different country. Many of these
Does
dots
it
are not
include
placed
those,
exactly where the base is because many of these bases
those
are clustered
hidden base,
in areas,
you know?
and if I tried to map them all in the exact spot where they really are, they would all just sort of stack on top of each other and you wouldn't really be able to see them. But these dots represent every single base outside of the United States, from huge complexes the size of Rhode Island to small airstrips, little facilities that only house American drones or radar or supplies. This is all of them, and
Bro.
at least all that we know of. And if you look at this map and you see a base that you know of that is not here, or one that is there that doesn't belong there, tell me about it. I want to know, because this is sort of hard information to ascertain. The Pentagon is not very transparent,
lot
and
in the
neither are
issue, though,
host
that
countries
country in
about
that part.
where
Like,
certain bases
I
are
don't know that
and why
country
they
is, but
exist.
what
Many of
fuck?
the bases around the world are their existence is due to an agreement between the two countries that is often not open to the public. That is secret.
Any errors here are mine and not David's. All in all, the number here is about 750. 750 US military bases, big and small, outside of the United States. By
Are-
outside of the
are
United
they
States,
included
I'm
the
including
secret base?
US territories that are not equal to the United States, like Guam, Puerto Rico, etc. But in reality, we probably don't know
Okay.
the real number because that data just simply is not transparently available to us. There are a couple major clusters here where the most bases exist. One major one is Germany, and the others are Japan and South Korea. These are basically holdovers from World War II and the subsequent Korean War, when the US, who won the war, came in and occupied these countries in order to set up a new government, write a new constitution, and to help the post-war transfer to a new government. But what's most interesting to me aren't these clusters that came about because of World War II, but instead the far-flung, sort of unexpected or little-known places that the US military has a little footprint. Like all the dots in Africa, which have popped up in recent years as the US has expanded its presence there. These are usually small installations that hold maybe a few soldiers or mainly private citizens who are government contractors. And
Does
they
Africa
mainly
have
house things like
soldiers?
drones
I mean,
or radar or
military
weapon
officials,
systems.
like
You also have
official
this
military,
cluster of
you
dots
know,
deep
in the
in
country
the Indian
itself.
Ocean, which is the island of Diego Garcia, which I've talked about at length, about the US military's role in displacing hundreds of local people to set up a base there. Some of these dots are just airstrips, a runway in the middle of nowhere. And these runways usually belong to the host country, and the US just rents them for a period of time. Like this facility in the middle of the
Okay.
desert in Oman. Places like this exist to hold supplies in case a war breaks out. So the US maintains these stockpiles of war supplies all around the globe.
That is smart,
So
though.
that they can strike at any point without having to ramp up a war economy at home. It takes away a lot of the friction from
that's smart.
going to war.
You can't
They've
blame
made
America,
it easier for the U.S. military to launch offensive wars. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were easier to launch because the U.S. has maintained a huge infrastructure of bases.
Some of these dots don't represent a place where US soldiers are actually stationed, but instead it represents where money from the Pentagon has gone to influence or build up infrastructure. For example, in Iceland, the US is spending a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars, to upgrade this airport, the airport that we all go through when we're going to Iceland, but doing it for military purposes so that the US can use it, can land there if needed. So next time you land in Iceland on your way to the Blue Lagoon, just know that you're passing by one of these little dots. Over here in the Azores, these islands that are owned by Portugal, nearly 2,000 kilometers away from any landmass, there is a group of US military installations
What the
mainly
fuck?
used for
Even there?
refueling and weapon storage. Head up here to Greenland and you'll see a little base way up high, the most northern base in the world where 140 Americans live. Kind of looks interesting. I'd love to go there someday. Way out here in the Pacific, you've got loads of remote military bases owned by the United States. They're mainly small airstrips, like this base on the southern tip of this huge atoll of the Marshall Islands. All right, listen, I'm not going to explain every single base. There are 750, maybe 800. There's a bunch of bases. I just wanted to give you a flavor of what some of these look like. They're diverse, they're all over the place, and they're fascinating to me. I have been compiling accounts of people who live next to US military bases. I have over 100 accounts from people that, from my call out on Instagram. I want more. I want to make an entire video about life next to a base. And that is why I'm calling upon all of you. I'm going to put a link in my description to like a survey. It's like a form of like what it's like to live next to a US military base. I have it right here.
Like,
and I'm going to be checking
like,
it.
America
you can fill
is
out this
paranoid
form,
or something.
and
Shit.
then I will get your response and I will read through your response, and I will use that to construct an understanding of what life is like next to a US military base. I talked to David a bunch about this too. He's done a bunch of research, done a bunch of interviews, and I want to keep talking about this. So, if you don't live next to a military base, I want to hear from you, like, what are your thoughts about this? Whether you're an American or not an American, like, does this seem right? Does this seem like the right choice, the right thing for our taxpayer money to be going towards? I'm still making up my mind on a lot of this stuff, and I want to start a discussion. My goal in this video was to just map it, was to just look at it, be able to see it on a map.
We have,
and I've finally done that.
US
By the way, there will be a
military base,
high-res version of this
that
map
was
on my
removed
Patreon
during,
for patrons who
2020.
sign up for the map
Last
background
year, so,
tier.
yeah.
That will be there. So I will be in the comments more than normal for this video. I want to hear from you. Before you go, I want to say thank you to the people who gave me a lot of footage for this piece. I didn't go out into the desert and the ocean.
Guys, that is US military everywhere by Johnny Harris. That shit crazy, bro. Like, it's like United States, it's a little bit paranoid, but I'm not really blaming them, you know, because they have a lot of enemies and shit. Also, that's a smart move, you know, because from what the guy said, what Johnny Harris said, it would be very, very helpful, you know, in case a war broke out. They can easily resupply in that bases, deploy their people, you know what I'm saying? It would be very, very easy to do that shit if you have military bases in the said area, you know? So yeah. Also, I don't know how this military base works, because the only thing that Johnny Harris said was it was involved in a deal between two countries, a close deal that is not made in public. That's the reason why they have military bases there. So how does it work? Do they pay for it with rents, or how big is it? There's a limit to the people on it, limit of shit. I mean, planes, jets. Are there any limits to it? You know, we really don't know nothing about it. Also, the number of bases, it's not even accurate. Just like the guy said, he was still guessing for it, but it's around 750. That's his guess, but it's not really, you can't really tell the numbers, you know, because it's not made in public. How many is it? So yeah, anything other than that, really don't know. Anyways, that's it, guys, you know. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell button for post notifications. Don't worry about your suggestion, guys. I'm gonna make a reaction out of it, you know, just wait. Anyways, I'll see you guys soon.